If you keep building processes and SOPs just to have your team ignore them, then this video is for you because I'm going to tell you how to both improve your process adoption and how to measure and track that your process is being implemented properly. I'm Patrick, the founder of Univium, a business automation development company, and a lot of automation requires you to do process optimization consulting and make sure that the process fits the automation. With that comes making sure that once you build a process, it's actually implemented and used by the team. And this was a whole thing I had to learn when I started my business about how to make sure people actually use your processes. And so I'm going to go over just 5 key areas that I focus on to make sure that happens. So starting off with number 1, it is understanding the difference between systems and processes. And this is really a high-level overview to begin with, but systems are more organic, naturally occurring within your business. And it's stuff that's kind of like tribal knowledge that people just do naturally because it's been done for a long time. Whereas processes are more specific, concrete, documented, and step-by-step that you kind of build intentionally and implement within your business. And so make sure you don't mistake systems for processes. Processes are, very defined and very implementable, so to speak. And so once you understand that, then it makes it a lot easier to kind of focus on these other areas. The next one is focus on simplicity. Although processes can be complex because businesses are complex, the more complex your process is, the less likely your team is to want to adopt it for a variety of different reasons. Number 1, it takes more effort to learn a process that's complex. Number 2, it's more difficult to implement and execute that process accurately whenever there's just a lot of different nuances within it. So I would say focus on simplicity. And to do that, one of the things I recommend is focusing on the checklist method. Every process should be able to fit in just a single step-by-step checklist. Try not to focus too much on like branching processes where if this, then that. Try to keep your processes just a step-by-step checklist. That's something I learned via reading the Checklist Manifesto, which is a really great book on how to build effective processes. If you can get your process simple, that already significantly increases the likelihood that your team is going to execute on it. Next up, we have optimize for the speed of retrieval. Optimize for the speed of retrieval. And that essentially means make sure that your team knows where to find your processes and how to find your processes. So whenever they need the process, they can access it. This is one of the most common things I see is things get busy. People are just running at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And so whenever the time comes for someone to try and execute a process step by step, they don't have time to go and find the process, and so they try to go off of their memory alone, and then they end up not executing it properly, and they end up creating their own system rather than following the process that you created. And this is one of the things I see happen very often in businesses is people get confused of like, why isn't my process being implemented? It's because people are going off of their memory and inventing systems rather than the process that you designed. And so make sure that people know where to find the processes you've prepared. For this, I would typically recommend finding some kind of, number 1, a business process management software, as well as a knowledge-based software that can both serve as like the single source of truth for where processes and SOPs are stored. And with that typically comes a really good search functionality that allows people to easily search and find processes in a variety of different ways. But if they can find the process easily, it makes it easier to look at it and execute it. And I have a really good recommendation for a software for business process management and for knowledge-based storage and whatnot. And so I'm going to recommend that in one of these other upcoming bullet points. Next up, we have provide formal training and value explanation. And so one of the things that would happen often early on when I started my business is that I would design a process for a company, and I would design an automation, and I would document it really well, and I would keep it simple, and I would make sure they knew where to find it. But I originally never did any training, and so that came with me following up saying, hey, how's it going? How's the process going? And they're like, our team's struggling, the automation isn't working, and this or that is a problem. And what I found after a couple of sessions of doing some research is they simply didn't know how to use the process or didn't understand why the process was the way that it was. And so I had to start conducting, for some of our larger and more complex automations, I had to start conducting training sessions with the companies to explain, look, this is the process, this is how it's done step by step, and most importantly, and this was the key thing, and I didn't really understand this, it was never about how do I execute this process. It was always about why should I execute this process. It's about what's the value behind it. They would see the steps, they know how to do it, but they don't do it because they don't understand why. So I would show them, this is why you need to execute this process this way, because when you don't do step 2, then all of this other stuff happens and it causes a problem, and when you don't do step 3, then all of this other stuff happens and it becomes a problem. And so training is essential, and it's essential for reasons that you might not expect, in such that training is essential to properly convey the value of the process you've built to the team that's going to be executing it. Because if they don't understand the value of the process, they're just not going to execute on it. And with that training, of course, there is some how-to. Again, I said keep your processes simple, and so sometimes there are some nuances you need to go over with training. And so training kind of just takes everything I mentioned before and kind of packages it all together so that you kind of hit on all the different elements needed to ensure that your process is actually adopted. And last but not least, we have tracking adoption metrics. Tracking adoption metrics. And so you've done everything that you can do to ensure the process is adopted. Now we just need to measure it and make sure that it actually is adopted. And I kept this one really simple. There's a lot of stuff you can do with it. I would say, number one, with some of the business process management platforms out there and knowledge-based platforms out there, you can track how frequently certain SOPs and documents are accessed. That way you know how frequently your team is referencing what you've built to make sure it's executed properly. So that's one way, is how often are people actually looking at this thing that I've spent, a couple of hours typing up. And then the next one is determine which errors occur as a direct result of the process not being followed. So if you know that when, someone skips step 5, that a specific error is going to occur, I would identify that error and set up a notification so that whenever that error occurs, you get notified and hey, the process clearly isn't being executed properly. Let's check in. And determining why the process wasn't executed properly can be a variety of different reasons. That's probably another video. But that's the first step, is being able to track and monitor it and catch it and know when to give your team reminders of, hey, we have this process, you should follow it. And so, so those cover kind of the 5 key areas I would definitely recommend to try and improve your process adoption within your business. And one of the things I wanted to share, if you do need a good business process management platform, there's one I use for my team called OpSymbol to assemble your operations. And I'll just share my screen and show you so you can get an idea of it. I don't want to go into the back end and show everything in my dashboard, but it's a really great platform. A lot of business process management platforms aren't really designed for small businesses or priced for small businesses, but OpSymbol is a really great platform that's built specifically for small businesses. It can do both processes, step-by-step processes, as well as SOPs and reference documents and that sort of thing. And so I definitely recommend checking it out. That's opsymbol.com, and we'll include a link in the description for that as well. But that's all I have for today. And as always, if you need any help with automation or process optimization within your business, definitely feel free to contact us via our website at univium.com, and we'll be sure to get back with you in 24 hours or less. And also, don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn, and subscribe on YouTube to stay up to date with all the latest automation trends and whatnot. So, thank you very much, and take care.